the verdict right now.
All right, and juror number 9, you were the foreperson in this case, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, and are these the verdicts of the jury?
Yes, it is.
And are they unanimous?
Yes, it is.
In criminal case number FE 2024-666, count 1, we, the jury on the issue, join in the case of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Brendan Robert Banfield, defendant, find the defendant guilty of aggravated murder of Joseph Ryan and Christine Banfield as part of the same act or transaction. Case number FE 2024-666, count 4. We, the jury on the issue, joined in the case of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Brendan Robert Banfield, defendant, find the defendant guilty of aggravated murder of Joseph Ryan within the same 3-year period during which he did also kill and murder Christine Banfield. In case number FE 2024-666, count 5, we, the jury on the issue, joined in the case of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Brendan Robert Banfield, defendant, find the defendant guilty of using a firearm in the commission of a felony. In case number FE 2024-873, count 1, we, the jury on the issue, joined in the case of the Commonwealth of Virginia versus Brendan Robert Banfield, defendant, find the defendant guilty of child endangerment.
All right, would either side like the jury polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right,
Members of the jury, if this is your verdict, please answer yes. If this is not your verdict, please answer no. Juror number 2? Juror number 5?
Yes.
Juror number 9?
Yes.
Juror number 10?
Yes.
Juror number 12?
Yes.
Juror number 19?
Yes.
Juror number 22?
Yes.
Juror number 25?
Yes.
Juror number 28?
Yes.
Juror number 32?
Yes.
Juror number 34?
Yes.
Juror number 37?
Yes.
Thank you.
the court does find that the jury verdict is unanimous at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, this completes your service in this case, and I know I speak for everybody that we thank you in this difficult case for all the time and attention you've taken to it. I do need you to go back to the jury room for one more time, and I'll be back there in a few minutes just to talk to you before you leave, okay? All right, so you're excused to the jury room. Thank you.
And just like that, you saw the jury there made up of 7 women and 5 men, concluding that Brendan Banfield is guilty of murder of both killing his wife, Christine Banfield, and also Joseph Ryan, guilty of child endangerment, and also guilty of using a firearm in the commission of a felony. And I thought it was interesting there because he sort of had the same expression that we've seen throughout this trial,
Mr.
this sort of
Banfield, in
just
accordance
sullen,
with the jury
blank
verdict,
look.
I do find you guilty
Right, yeah.
of aggravated
And, I'm
murder
curious
on
to see if we're
count
going to see
1,
his face here in a
24,
moment, but, he hasn't really shown
and
much
also
emotion.
count
It did
4,
look for a moment, though, that he
24,
might
66,
get
and count
emotional,
5,
but then he
commission
didn't.
of a felony
We're
with a
gonna listen back
firearm of 2024-666. Also, on count 1 of 873 of child endangerment, I do find you guilty as found by the jury. Do you wish to have a pre-sentence investigation report, Mr. Carroll?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, I'll order a pre-sentence investigation report for this case. What date did you want to set this for?
I don't know what dates you would have available.
Wait, I could set it for, do you plan to have victim impact statements, I
Yes, ma'am,
assume,
yes.
and testimony? I mean, I could put it on, well, any day before July 1st.
Understood.
I'm retired then, so let's pick Is April far enough for you, Mr. Carroll?
Your Honor, may I just look at my schedule?
Sure.
Would there be a particular day?
April 17th is my sentencing day.
Okay.
Judge, that is the one day in April we would
You
not.
can't do, okay. Well, we can make it a different date in April. I mean, I do have March 20th, but that might be too quick.
All right, sounds like we've been hearing just a little housekeeping here. They're setting
Yeah.
a pre-sentencing date for Brendan Banfield for April 17th, but it sounded like that might not work for the prosecution, so they may be trying to determine here when he will appear back in court.
Right.
So we have some details about Brendan Banfield. We've been talking about what happens to Juliana Magalhães. What does she get as a result of this?
Well, so as part of her plea agreement, the terms of that plea agreement, she will get time served.
Okay.
But she still has to have a sentencing hearing, and that has not been scheduled yet. They were holding off on a sentencing hearing until after the trial, after she had testified.
Obviously, that lesser charge of manslaughter. We know
Right.
initially she was charged with murder. And we should point out in this case, in the most serious charges, he could face life in prison, but we know they abolished the death penalty in Virginia back in 2021, so that is off the table.
Correct.
So the most he could get
Is
life in prison. What do we know about the fate of Valerie, the daughter who was caught in the middle of all of this and who has lost now both her mother and father?
Right, so with the little girl, you know, she's 8.5 years old now. She was 4.5 when this happened. We're coming up on the anniversary of this. It happened at the end of February in 2023. So she's now 8.5 years old, and what does her future hold for her? You know, her mother is gone. Her father is now facing a possible life sentence. So our legal experts say there will now be hearings likely in family court to determine who gets custody for her. Will it be Brendan's family or will it be Christine's family?
Do we know who has been appearing in court
Yes.
to support, obviously, Christine Banfield and that side of the family? Is it her parents? Are
Yeah.
there other family members there as well?
So we definitely know that her father has been there. I believe her mother has been there as well. Her father was called to testify by the prosecution pretty early on. But, you know, they have both been there in the courtroom. The little girl, from what I understand, has not been in the courtroom in any capacity, which, you know, there's a lot of graphic stuff going on with this. And we know that Brendan Banfield's family, I believe his father and his stepmother have been consistently in the courtroom.
They must have been the ones sitting
that were-
behind
yes.
him.
We saw them
I think that we
often.
saw them
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
momentarily. And then as for his mother, I'm not sure if she has been in the courtroom throughout the entire thing. I know her name has been mentioned a lot, especially when it came to Juliana Peres Magalhães and when they were talking about who was paying her legal fees. We know Brendan's mother had been paying her legal fees up until when she took that plea agreement, and then that stopped. And then for Joseph Ryan, I can tell you his mother has been watching the trial virtually because she had some health issues. She wasn't able to come up here. She does plan to be here for sentencing. I just sent her a message to see if there's anything she'd like us to mention. And I know her sister has been in the courtroom watching the trial, and she's been watching it virtually.
Okay, yeah, so we're waiting. We should let folks at home know we are standing by for a press conference, presumably at this point from prosecutors and perhaps the defense attorney here,
Right.
the person who represented Banfield.
John
So-
Carroll.
Yeah, so take us back to the beginning. I know folks at home, they may not have been following every single detail of this case, but it was pretty graphic in terms of what we learned. We heard the prosecutor side of the story for quite some time, from the very, very beginning, quite frankly. But this time, we got to hear from Brendan Banfield himself, describing that relationship with the au pair, but also his wife.
Yeah.
And that was the only time we actually saw any real emotion from him. He seemed to have smiled as he talked about this relationship. And this really interesting dichotomy between his feelings that he said he had for Juliana versus the feelings he claimed he had for his wife of 19 years.
Right, and you know, he said that he would always return to his wife. He had multiple affairs.
And she did too. He said even though
He
she
said
can't defend herself.
She did too, right.
Yeah.
And there's no evidence, there was no evidence presented from the prosecution or the defense to say that she had relationships with other people. They showed no evidence, and the prosecutor brought that up at the end. But you know, this was a moment where we did see some emotion from him, and I can tell you this is when he's listening to the body camera audio, the audio when police are inside the bedroom with him. And he's watching that video and reacting to that right there. So that was probably the most emotion in terms of crying that we saw from him. But when he was up there on the stand testifying, I mean, when he was talking about the affairs, when he was talking about how him and Juliana's relationship first started, he was almost smirking. So a very weird reaction. one that really bothered a lot of people when we were looking at the comments on YouTube and on the texts we were getting. People were very confused about his facial expressions during all of this.
And we know the au pair, Juliana Peres Magalhães, will be sentenced on February 13th. We're just getting that news. So that's in, 11 days from now?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we know that she
that's
was
coming up
cooperating.
quickly.
She was a key witness for prosecutors in this case.
She was, but it's important to mention Brendan Banfield was arrested prior to Juliana Peres Magalhães taking that plea agreement. So for a timeline for you guys, in February of 2023, that's when Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan were killed. In October of 2023, that is when Juliana Peres Magalhães was first arrested. It wouldn't be until September of the following year, so 2024, that's when Brendan Banfield was arrested. And the prosecutors said he was arrested because of their evidence that they found. Juliana didn't take that plea agreement until a month later in October of 2024. So while she's their star witness, if you will, they said they had a case with or without her. She was just the bonus.
Do we know what, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, you know, the thing that really caught so many people as they were listening to the details here is Christine is dead. They have moved themselves into their bedroom, right? Put pictures in the room, set up as if they're a couple.
And they were a couple.
After this vicious murder.
Right.
The murders of two people.
Yeah, and so Brendan was asked about that when he took the stand, and his response to that was, well, she saved my life. Juliana saved my life. She was a hero. How could you not fall in love with somebody that saved your life? That was his response to that. But you know, so for the timeline there, the killings happened in February. As soon as they were able to move back into the home, Juliana, Brendan Banfield, and the little girl, again, she's 4.5 at the time, moved back into the home. And Juliana testified that a few months later, she moved into the master bedroom. And that's where we saw those photos inside the bedroom, her lingerie in the closet, her photo and framed photos of them clearly out on dates. And then there were the love letters that we heard about at length. Love letters where, you know, at points things were not going well for her and Brendan. She was questioning the relationship.
And many of these letters came after Christine was already gone. So these were his profession of love for her after these murders happened.
Right. Yeah. So all of those letters were from when she was in jail. She was writing back and forth with Brendan, and those letters continued till around when he was arrested in September.
And we know she was working out some sort of deal, right, with Netflix or the family.
Yeah.
And journalists. Apparently it came out that she had been talking to journalists as well.
Right. So she said that she started to really take the messages she was receiving from producers. I don't know if you would call them journalists, because they were offering her money, right? They were offering her money to tell their story, to tell her story to only them. And she said that they were her friends, we heard her say at one point, these producers, and they were offering her money, but she didn't think it was enough money to tell her story. So a lot of weird things happening there.
In addition to just the fact that these deaths, these horrific deaths happened, another sort of centerpiece of this is this fetish website and this fetish lifestyle. You talked to Joseph Ryan's mom about his choices, his lifestyle. A lot of people may not know much about this fetish website, but that also is one of the distinguishing things about this particular case that I think perhaps drew a lot of attention to a case that maybe people wouldn't have had on their radar.
I think just the audacity that someone would try, and keep this in mind, Christine Banfield, at one point, she was a nurse who treated sexual assault patients. And so Brendan is accused of setting his wife up for this sexual fantasy role play scenario. They use the language rape fantasy. So you're setting up your wife, who is a prior sexual assault nurse, for that. And it's just raising a lot of questions. You know, when she was killed, she was a nurse at a pediatric hospital. So I think there's that level of, why would you do that? Like, how much, you know, what's going on here?
And that is part of this elaborate plot that we heard so much about. This didn't they didn't wake up one morning and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Based on what we heard during this trial, Juliana and Brendan, they've been going back and forth for quite a while to figure out how to carry this out, including the visits to the gun range.
Right. So their relationship, it started in August of 2022, I believe. So Juliana joined the family in 2021. In 2022, in August of 2022, Juliana says that relationship began with Brendan Banfield. She, you know, when she was testifying, did not explain how the relationship started. We only found out how it may or may not have started through Brendan Banfield's testimony, where he said that Juliana initiated it. She was pressuring him. She was making comments about how she had dated or was trying to date people with similar names, similar appearance. So
Which
Yeah.
he loved, apparently, when he was recounting that sort of
Right.
dynamic.
But what's interesting here is that the power dynamic between the two of them was not something that either side really got into. She's an au pair,
Right.
right? You come to live
21,
with
22.
someone, right? Your boss has much more power than you have. And so I wonder if that also, in addition to all of these details that the jurors heard, they said, wait a minute, the power really was in the hands of Brendan Banfield in this relationship, not Juliana Magalhães. Now, she owns her actions, but in terms of the dynamic of who controlled what, he really was in control.
And I think that goes back to the conversation of the fact that Brendan's mother was paying for her legal fees. So while she didn't speak and talk about the story she presented on the stand when she testified, she was being represented by Brendan's family. She is from Brazil. She does not have family here. So her family is the Banfield family. And so she's kind of stuck there and relying on them. She mentioned how she was relying on Teresa, Brendan Banfield's mother, to pay her commissary, to connect her with her family, to pay for those phone calls. So there's a lot of heavy reliance on the Banfield family. And it wasn't until she took that plea deal that the money cut off and she then turned to the journalists. But if you want to go back to that plan, they start their relationship in August of 2022. In October is when she says Brendan came to her with this plan, this elaborate plan to get rid of his wife because he said divorce wasn't an option. Right. He didn't want to have to worry about custody of their little girl, and he didn't want to have to worry about the money. And who knows what that means, but he said
Which
divorce was...
a lot of people question. They're like, wait, what? You think this is the better option than just simply getting a divorce?
Right, and that's according to her testimony, right? And I think it's important to keep in mind what the prosecutor said at the end. You may not believe Juliana, you may not believe Brendan Banfield. It's going to come down to who do you believe more in this case.
And we know that all Brendan said in response to these questions about whether or not he murdered his wife was, that's just absolutely crazy.
Right.
That's it.
Those were his words. It is interesting that as they made this case about aggravated murder, which suggests that you are involved, you have planned in some way, you have researched it. The thing that stood out to me is he knew that his wife had a blood clotting disorder. So if you have a blood clotting disorder and you are being stabbed multiple times, it is very difficult for you to eclipse that, right? Because you already have a blood clotting disorder. He knew this.
And he also knew that she was a prior sexual assault nurse, right? Like he knew a lot of things. They were together for, I believe, almost 20 years. They had been together through so much. They had a child together. They lived in New York. They moved down here for his job, and she came with him and then was able to find a job. That came up during his testimony that she had done a lot for him. And we didn't get to hear a lot about her during this trial, but we do know a little bit about her and what we know and what happened. I mean, it's absolutely horrifying.
Was that by design, though? Did they want to take her out of this a little bit to put more of the emphasis on who Brendan was and who,
maybe,
Juliana was?
Right. And they didn't really touch character here. And one of our legal experts, I asked him about that, and he was saying you don't need to go after the character of Christine or defend that. Now, they could have, when they brought up the conversation of how she was having affairs, that was an opportunity where the prosecution could have come up and presented a witness who could have said otherwise, or the defense could have provided a witness that said she was having affairs, but no evidence was provided to indicate that she was. And again, she is not on trial here. At the end of the day, she's not the one on trial. Joseph Ryan is not on trial. It is Brendan Banfield on trial here.
Brendan Banfield on trial, and Brendan Banfield found guilty of 4 counts today. Guilty on aggravated murder of Christine Banfield, of Joseph Ryan, guilty of using a firearm in commission of a felony, and child endangerment.
Again, we are standing by for a press conference from prosecutors and the defense attorney. We will bring that to you live when it happens. Stay right here.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
Can you believe we still have all that ice out there?
It's kind of crazy.
Wow.
Do you know I backed out of my driveway today? Actually, I went down to my driveway and I saw a piece of someone else's vehicle in the driveway.
Really?
And I said to myself, is this my vehicle? It is not my vehicle. It is somebody else's part or part.
Okay.
Be careful out there.
Well, I mean, really be careful. I took Mr. Neer out today, and I heard this rumbling. I didn't really know what it was. By the time I figured out what it was snow piling off the roof. And that can hurt you.
Yeah, good
So
call.
if you hear the rumbling, be careful.
Okay.
All right,
All right,
let's
stand by.
Top, we're going to have you stand by for a second, Top. That press conference we promised you earlier is beginning. Let's listen in.
1 second.
Not a problem.
Is the audio okay?
I'm used to it. I can wait.
Okay. Wait 1 second. Okay.
Okay. Everybody else good? All right.
Good, are we good?
You're all good? Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure, not a problem. First of all, guys, I just want to say thank you very much for covering this case dutifully and respectfully. There were obviously a lot of salacious details in this case that caused it to get a lot of attention. But at the end of the day, this case is about two people, two neighbors of ours that were murdered almost 3 years ago here in Fairfax County. We take that very, very seriously. And to start off, I just want to thank the great detectives of the Fairfax County Police Department that put in yeoman's work to get this case here. I also want to thank the people in my office that put in hours during the last couple of years, not least of which are the three people standing behind me, Sylvia Villanueva, Kelly Sprisler, and Jenna Sands. You all saw how complicated this case was. A lot of digital evidence, a lot of forensic evidence, and this team behind me put it together in a way that a jury could understand, and they did it with professionalism and skill, the type that you will only see in a modern prosecutor's office like that we have here in Fairfax County. So at the end of the day, I am very, very pleased that we are able to stand here successfully having gotten justice for Joe Ryan and Christine Banfield. So who has questions?
Steve, how would you describe someone who would not only carry out these murders, but make up a story like he did, and then get on the witness stand and tell it again?
It's monstrous. I mean, that's really what it is. It's monstrous. I mean, we are the safest jurisdiction, safest large jurisdiction anywhere in America, meaning we don't have a lot of homicides, but I've been doing this job for a while, and I can tell you that this defendant stood out to me highest above all the other murder cases that we've done in my 6 years here.
Steve, in Juliana's proffer, there were, obviously that was 4 hours long, there was a lot of details in there. There was a lot that your office chose maybe not to get into. Talk about what you wanted to highlight for this jury, what you thought was needed to successfully prosecute this case, and maybe some things that you chose not to introduce as evidence.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot in this case. There were a lot of rabbit holes to run down. We knew two things going into this case. The case was about the blood. This case was always going to be in the blood. You heard it right from Jenna's opening statement. This case was about the blood. We knew that before we even charged this case. The second thing is we want it to be surgical. We want it to be in, we want it to be out. We didn't need to go through every single little thing. We didn't want to confuse the jury. We didn't want to burden them, and we didn't want to put them to sleep. What we really wanted is we wanted the high-level stuff, and you saw that. You saw us focus on the blood. You saw us use Juliana or have Juliana come up there to give flavor to what happened in that room. And then we used the blood, we used the digital forensics, we used everything else to support that and give flavor to that. So I think we asked for 4 weeks, but as we got into this trial, we realized that we could do it much quicker and much more effectively than if we took all 4.
How important was Juliana's testimony? You have the defense saying she has always maintained backing up Brendan Banfield until the very last minute here, and almost saying that you guys were too tunnel focused. Without Juliana's proffer, I mean, do you think we could have gotten to this result?
I think we can. As a matter of fact, we were planning for it. If you take a look at the timeline of the case, we did not authorize charges against Brendan Banfield until after we got the blood analysis done. That is what we were waiting for. And it wasn't until 2 months after we got the blood and we indicted Brendan for these crimes that Juliana decided to proffer and cooperate with us. So we had planned to go forward with just the blood evidence and everything else, and we felt that even with that, we could have put this case on. Now, of course, as a prosecutor, if you have somebody in the room and they want to proffer, they want to turn state's evidence, you're not going to turn that down. You're going to investigate that. We did that proffer. She told us some things that we had not known. We did check on her story. We felt confident in that story, confident enough to offer her the plea deal that we gave her and put her on the stand as part of our case in chief.
Can I ask Jenna a quick question?
Just briefly.
Yeah,
Steve,
let me get the jury and then I'll...
Did you get an opportunity to talk to Mr. Ryan and Christine's family? What did you say to them?
I had before. I did not get a chance to today, and I'm always very hesitant to speak for the victims' families. I know that it was a very, very emotional day. I imagine that maybe we'll be speaking again in the future, but I hope that this verdict gives them some sense of peace and puts them somewhere on the path towards healing after this tragic homicide.
Jenna, can I ask you a quick question? I'm sorry.
Sorry?
What's your message to Banfield's daughter?
God, I mean, what do you say to a child in that situation? I don't know if I have a message for her, but I have a hope for her. I have a hope that she spends the rest of her life with people who love her and know that there were people in this world who loved her. And I hope that she always carries that in her heart. Now, Bob, you had a question for Jenna?
Yeah, Jenna.
Yeah, sure.
Take us through the strategy. It was talked about during the trial. I'm arresting her first to get to him.
Sure. Well, there was originally a belief that was born pretty early in the investigation that she was an accomplice of Mr. Banfield's, that there was a plan. As our detectives uncovered more evidence that supported the possibility of the plan, the idea was formed to arrest her based on the evidence that we knew we had, because it would be a successful prosecution, but also with the hope that she would end up seeing the light and coming to us with her story. It was something that we obviously had to wait quite a while for, and to be honest, had given up on at the time that we charged Mr. Banfield. We weren't going to wait anymore. We were providing her with the discovery that she needed to be able to defend herself in her case, and so there was no expectation that she would turn. It was just really happenstance that we were reached out to by her counsel that she was finally ready to talk.
And you had a
mentioned
chance
in your
to question
closing-
him face to face.
Sorry, say
What
again?
was that like? You had a chance to question him finally on the stand
I
face
did.
to face. How do you describe him?
I think that everyone has commented on what was so obvious, that he was not truthful, that he was cold, that he behaved oddly in response to questions that should have elicited emotion, that he never spoke of himself as Christine's husband, that he didn't speak lovingly of his wife, that he showed absolutely no human emotion that we expected to see of someone in his position.
You mentioned your closing. Took the stand, and how do you prepare for?
Sorry.
You mentioned your closing how he wanted to be with Juliana, and hence the possible motive here. Outside of that, is there anything else as far as why he would commit this?
You know, it's really challenging to try to put yourself in someone like Mr. Banfield's mind. And I don't know that I want to try that hard, to be completely honest. I think that he was obviously hoping for a life with Juliana, and he didn't see a way to accomplish that without executing his wife.
Are you surprised that Brendan took the stand? Do you believe that actually
Yes.
helped your case?
Yes, I, having been a defense attorney for years, I think I would have counseled against him taking the stand, but, Mr. Carroll didn't have a lot to work with, and at the end of the day, if his client wanted to testify, he had the absolute right to do so.
What was the thinking behind giving Juliana such a sweetheart deal?
So I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a sweetheart deal. She does face 10 years in prison. That has not yet been determined. It is obviously a reduction, and it is certainly reflective of her cooperation. But in order to encourage her to tell the truth, there had to be something. I think that the agreement that she entered into will hopefully allow for the judge to pass judgment on her in a way that is measurable. It will certainly never account for the lives that she was responsible for taking, but I think that the amount of time that she'll serve will be determined by Judge Ascarati, and I'm sure it will be appropriate.
So she hasn't agreed to your recommendation?
Correct. The judge is free to sentence her as she chooses within the statutory limitations.
It's 10 years, even the max is still a gift, right, for someone who's plotted and set up Christine and Joe Ryan. And there's a lot of violence in this murder.
That is absolutely true.
Thank you, Jenna. I also wanted to add to this. You guys have access to Jenna if you have more questions for her. But no, I think it's really, really important that we don't characterize this as a quote-unquote sweetheart deal. This is the work of being a prosecutor. She still is taking accountability for homicides. When you take a look at what the relative culpability is, I think that where we have landed is appropriate. And quite frankly, Juliana, by testifying, answered a lot of questions, not only for us, but for the jury. Let's not forget how important her testimony may have been to some of those jurors. So her still facing up to 10 years in prison is very, very significant and well worth the cost to make sure that Brendan Banfield was convicted for a crime where it is a mandatory life sentence. As the law is written right now, Brendan Banfield will not walk free for the rest of his natural life.
Steve, is there anything else that a lot of times evidence does not get into a trial? What else should people know about this guy?
Oh, you're right.
That you were not able to present to the jury that had convinced you guys he was guilty.
Well, I hate to disappoint you, but for us, the evidence spoke volumes. I mean, we got our evidence in, what we thought was important, and I think that, in many ways, we're proud that we let the evidence speak for itself. So there's not really a lot of things that were outside the purview of the jury that led us to some kind of conclusion about what he did or what he did not do. We take a lot of pride, and we know the police take a lot of pride in following the evidence wherever it leads.
What do you hope Brendan Banfield is sitting in there thinking about right now?
I've always, I've been a prosecutor for, almost 15 years now, and I think about what goes through somebody's mind after they've been found guilty. And, quite frankly, my hope with this is that he realizes he didn't get away with it. And I know that sounds cliche, but I think through the evidence you can see a lot of things that he set up trying to get away with it, thinking that he was going to beat the system, trying to outsmart everybody. I hope he thinks that, and most of all, though, I hope he thinks about his wife and Joe and about what a heinous thing he did, because that's something that he is rightfully going to have to live with for the rest of his life. Any other? Yes, please.
I was just wondering,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, were the relatives there also related to Joe?
Or any Ryan relatives?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, they weren't here today, but they have
in
been
the
have
past.
been in the courtroom.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Sorry.
Steve,
Yeah.
rare to have cameras in the courtroom
Yes.
here in Virginia, particularly in a criminal case. A whole big part of the world watching this.
Yeah.
What do you hope the takeaway is for people who've been watching this incredibly salacious story here in our neighborhood? What do you hope the takeaway is for all these people that have been watching this play out?
Yeah, that's a great question, Drew. I think there are a couple takeaways that I hope they come away with. First of all, trials and this world, it's not Law and Order. It doesn't happen in half an hour. It's not black and white. There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of nuance. So I want them to understand what this work is. But I think the one thing I want people in this community to take away from is they got to see their justice system in action, right? They don't have to read about it, they get to see it. And I hope what they saw is a modern professional prosecutor's office doing a job with a very, very difficult case. I mean, the forensics, the blood, all of these things are very, very difficult to parse, to talk about, to explain to a jury. And the team behind me, quite frankly, they made it look easy. And I think that really speaks to the level of professionalism, not only in the prosecutor's office, but with the courts generally, as well as the investigation of the county police department, which is top notch.
Steve, how about cameras in the courtroom all the time?
Bob, I'd love it. Honestly, I would not be opposed. We are proud of the work that we do here as a law enforcement apparatus in Fairfax County. We have nothing to hide. I would love everybody to see every one of our trials and see what goes into the decision making. We do almost 20,000 cases a year. And for people to really understand the nuance and how we agonize over a lot of these decisions to try to do justice, I think that would be great for this community to see.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Yes.
Sorry. The plan was very out of the normal realm or very extraordinary. Did you ever get any sense as to how this plan came about? Do you have any? Seriously, that's what most of us are asking, right?
I gotta say, It might be glib, but if you watch the trial, you might have been able to see it. But in all seriousness, no, we just have the evidence, and quite frankly, our job is to follow the evidence. And we heard what Juliana said, we heard what Brendan said. Those are our clues into what happened. But at the end of the day, we presented the evidence to the jury, and we're just very, very pleased that we're able to stand here knowing that we got justice for Joe and Christine.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, guys. Yeah.
Guys, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for sticking
County
it out.
Commonwealth
all day
Attorney
today.
Steve Descano, who talked about these crimes that we have been hearing about for the past few weeks as both salacious and monstrous. He said Banfield and Juliana Magalhães planned to kill Banfield's wife Christine and Joseph Ryan, and he talked about how complicated this case was and how they had to rely on digital and forensic evidence, and his words were this was about the blood, that forensic evidence was key.
Yeah. And Jenna Sands, the prosecutor for the case, that was in her opening statement, right? She said the blood evidence is what we have here for this case. And she also said Juliana is a great bonus, right? She's our witness, but this is a blood evidence-based case. And you heard Steve Descano say he believes they could have won this case even without Juliana, who, again, didn't take the plea deal, didn't agree to testify until a month after Brendan Banfield was arrested.
Answering those questions again that we had earlier, why was she arrested first? Why did it take so long to arrest Brendan Banfield? Right. But it sounds like they were working on that blood analysis to build their case against Banfield.
Right. They've said that pretty consistently through the trial. We were waiting on the blood evidence, and they had enough evidence to arrest Juliana first. Obviously, arresting Juliana first did help them. They were able to listen to the conversations Juliana was having with Brendan Banfield. They were in a relationship while she was in jail. So there were phone calls they could listen to, and obviously the letters played a big role here.
It was interesting, and it caught all of our attention here when Jenna Sands started talking about this not being a sweetheart deal for Juliana Magalhães. We were under the impression that she had signed this deal and that because of it, she would get time served. So she would likely be done. Jenna Sands seems to suggest that the judge has the ability to sentence her to what she believes is within reason here, and that could be up to 10 years in prison.
And so the manslaughter charge, it does come with a potential maximum 10-year in prison, but the plea agreement she signed that we have back in the other room, it says that she would get time served. That is the recommendation. So could the judge come in and say, no, I'm going to give you the max sentence? Sure, it's possible, but our legal experts say it's unlikely because then they would be kind of going against that plea agreement, and the next attorney who tries to make a plea agreement with someone's going to be like, wait, the judge didn't uphold that last plea agreement, so it's unlikely.
We got to talk about Joseph Ryan,
Yes.
who just got caught up in all of this. We know that you spoke with his mother.
Right.
She told you how he was as a son, what she's going to miss about him. What is she saying about this, or any sort of relative about this verdict today?
Yeah, so as we've talked about at length, Joseph Ryan's mother was not able to be up here for the trial. She has been watching it virtually, and she's paying close attention to this because obviously her son is a victim, and now we know that he is a victim here, but he's being painted as a monster, And so I just checked in with her, and she did share this statement with me, so I'd love to read that if we can. I thank the jury, the prosecution, the judge, and the justice system. I thank everyone that loved and supported Joe. Today is a good day. It does not bring Joe back, but it says that Brendan Banfield will pay for the crimes he committed on that day, and that makes this a good day. Yeah. So she is breathing a sigh of relief right now, getting justice for her son, a young man who has been portrayed by the defense attorney, by Brendan Banfield, as a monster. Today, we know he did not kill Christine Banfield.
He was on this website. Obviously, his mom talked to you about his choices and preferences, but he certainly didn't think that he was going to a home where he was going to die.
Right, and she talked at length about that. Just because he was into something that may not be considered normal, that doesn't give you the right to kill someone. That doesn't mean he deserved to die just because he was into something different. And she was very adamant about that, and she wanted people not to pass judgment on her son and to keep in mind the facts of the case, and it looks like the jurors did do that.
Yeah, and I keep thinking about their daughter as well, who also got caught up in this as well. She's going to get older and look back at this and realize what happened in her home. She was there. We heard Steve Descano saying that he hopes that she spends the rest of her life with people who love her. And that touched a lot of folks.
I mean, can you even imagine if if Brendan Banfield says he walks into the house and he hears signs of his wife not moaning with pleasure, but moaning in agony, that his daughter, who's 4 years old at the time, in the basement by herself, she's got to be hearing or sensing something is off.
Yeah, and during his testimony, he said that she seemed scared, but you know, that's why he was hit with that child endangerment charge, and he was found guilty of that child endangerment charge. I think that speaks volumes to what the jurors think of his choices to allow, you know, he says Juliana brought the little girl into the home, but he opened the door, he allowed them in.
He left it unlocked.
Right,
Yes.
he left it unlocked, he opened the door, let them in, and he wasn't even worried when he was asked on the stand, why didn't you call 911? Repeatedly asked that. Weren't you worried about your daughter? And he said, that wasn't at the top of my mind.
It's interesting. He didn't seem to answer most questions definitively. You either know that you wrote a note, or you know that you left the door unlocked, or you don't. He never said yes or no. He would say, I don't believe that, or that wasn't the intent. I wonder if jurors started to think, something's not right in addition to that as well. Like, you know what you know.
I mean, he clearly is an investigator, right? We know he worked for the IRS. He has a background in investigation, so he's likely testified before. And it almost felt like he was answering the questions as somebody on the stand, as an expert or as an investigator versus a person.
Which Steve Descano alluded to, saying that he should know that he did not get away with this.
Right, yeah.
Well, it has been a trial that has really captivated so many. It has changed so many people's lives forever, especially young Valerie, who we all, I think, share the same hope that Steve Descano does, that she grows up knowing that she's feeling love, but that hopefully she's also getting some help too, because that's a considerable amount of trauma for a young person to endure. And we know that the imprint of that trauma can impact the whole span of your life. So we really do hope that she is being cared for at this time.
Okay, we know you have more calls to make as well. There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered.
And Katie, thank you for just your robust and thorough reporting throughout the entire portion of this, leading up to it, helping to make sure that we had the context going into our coverage to understand what was happening here. I think you helped our community understand this case a whole lot better too.
Hopefully it helps in some way. And Matthew Torres is in the courtroom too.
And we appreciate his hard work as well.
We'll be right back.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
Okay, another great picture of our frozen tundra, so to speak. This is on the Maryland side, Lock 23, Violet's Lock, way up River Road. That's looking across to Virginia, and I mean, it's a lot of ice on the river. Remember, it flows pretty briskly up there. Mike sent this in. Nice picture. I tell you what, though, groundhog, yes, he saw his shadow again, 140th time. So we're looking at 6 more weeks of winter, although Caitlin and I have been looking at some long-range maps, and I got to tell you, I'm a little sad. I don't see much happening in terms of snow for the next 2-3 weeks. So this is the midpoint between the solstice and the equinox. Last time he said it would be in early spring was back in 2019, but again, today he said 6 more weeks of winter. I'm not so sure. Snow cover is crazy. It's not, oh, daggone, it's not quite half the country, but it's close. When you see snow cover all the way down, to the coastal sections of North and South Carolina, that is really unheard of. Remember, Myrtle Beach had 8 inches of snow. I think Ocean Isle Beach, which is just southwest of Wilmington, North Carolina, had 15 inches of snow. So we'll try to get this to you again here. Again, he says 6 more weeks of winter. So snow cover, almost 50% of the country, very close to 50% of the country. It's all the way down to the coast of North and South Carolina and back into the Midwest and into the Rockies and, of course, into the Sierra as well. And you don't see this too often with snow cover down all the way to the coast of North and South Carolina. It's going to load soon, I promise. It's pretty cool when it does. And even up into the Midwest, Ohio Valley, tons of snow. Tennessee Valley, snow as well. A little less, as you might expect, in through the Plain States. No snow there. All right, we'll wait for it to load. All right, so here's Futurecast, and we're looking at, again, little bit of snow to our west by about this time tomorrow, about 24 hours from now. It doesn't have a lot of potential. And right now, most of the models are trying to shunt it south a little bit. So ironically, you have a better chance of snow in St. Mary's County and southern Charles County than you do in Frederick, Maryland. This is at 1 o'clock in the morning, so late tomorrow night. By 6 o'clock, it's almost gone, and notice it's kind of clipping the Delmarva too. There's another system to its south that could affect this. At one time, the models had it coming in here Wednesday, Thursday. That's going to stay to our south and to our east. Now we'll jump to Friday. So Arctic front approaches on Friday. Pretty good snow showers with this out in the Ohio Valley, back into Pittsburgh. That's at 12:30. Some of these could move through here at rush hour, so we'll monitor that very carefully. They won't last long, but they could be intense for a short time. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then when this rolls through, we're looking at more Arctic air Saturday and Sunday. But after that, we don't really see anything crazy in terms of Arctic outbreaks. Generally, a temperature rise after this weekend, but it's going to be another cold weekend. We clear out quickly by Saturday morning. So, weather impact, we're going to watch this Tuesday snow showers or light snow, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., that's the time frame. Minor accumulation, a dusting to an inch, and really, in some cases, nothing to an inch. Light shoveling or sweeping in some slick spots, no doubt about that because of the freeze and thaw. In just 10 minutes of snow will give you a slick spot. So regardless of what happens tomorrow, I want you to remember these. Need your shades or just be blind, snow blind. Windshield wiper fluid, top that off. Keep your headlights and taillights and clean your camera behind your car too. I just did that. And you still have to watch for walkers, runners on the road. Yeah, a lot of the sidewalks are clear now, but still, there might be a problem with that. All right, tomorrow morning, a little bit of sun to start. It kind of fades. Low 20s downtown. We're back to 40 tomorrow. It's been a minute since we hit 40. Well, I'll tell you, it's been a minute. We hit 46 the Friday before the storm a week ago. And then we do go back into the mid-30s as we get into 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Notice not really much of a wind chill, so clouds come in, but no worries about snow during the evening commute. Now watch this. We go down into this deep freeze again on Saturday and Sunday, but then a nice gradual step up to mid-40s. We get to mid-40s by the following Thursday, and that's pretty close to average. Our average is now going up, so average high is now 46. So once we get through this Saturday and Sunday, I think we can kind of take a little breath, a little deep breath. If your pipes haven't frozen by one day, probably going to be okay, really for the rest of the winter. And I've been sweating too. So How many days are consecutive days, stretches below 32? Record was 12 in 1936, 11 in 1935. We almost did it. If we'd stayed below freezing today, we would have. That was set back in 1989. But instead, we tied 9 days consecutively below 32, set in 1918 and 2026. That's still a pretty long stretch for us. And again, tied for 4th place. That's pretty impressive. I know it's kind of a dubious record, though. All right, tonight, just a few clouds. Pretty chilly already. 22 Hagerstown, 22 in D.C., 16 in Waldorf. Walking the dog, it will be cold. Tomorrow morning, some sunshine to start, but we're in the teens, almost across the board. And then by 9 o'clock, we're still in the 20s. And then we get into the 12:30, 1 o'clock. Now, winds are more south-southwest. Clouds have returned. Still dry. Don't worry about the commute tomorrow evening. By 6 o'clock, we're in the 30s, maybe a flurry up toward Hagerstown. Better chance for snow across the divide. And then by 9 o'clock, a patch of flurries or a snow shower between Winchester and also Waldorf. But this has been pretty consistent. Caitlin shows us at 4 o'clock, and I think it's updated, even moved farther south now. So there's some snow, just after midnight on Wednesday, so late Tuesday night with temps in the low 30s. That skedaddles out of there pretty quickly, and by 6 o'clock, we're already seeing, skies clear, winds turn out of the north, and kind of a cold day again on Wednesday. We'll make it probably above freezing, but still kind of cold. 31 by lunchtime on Wednesday, 28 up in Hagerstown, low 30s in Fredericksburg, and then by 5:30, we really don't go up much beyond that. 29 already in Fredericksburg, 27 in Waldorf. Again, this is Wednesday evening, and still a fair amount of clouds. And then by Thursday morning, we're clearing out, but cold. Temperatures between 10 and 20 to start Thursday morning. So light snow or flurries possible at night, and then a few clouds early on Wednesday, then partly cloudy. Little colder on Thursday. We're back to the mid-30s, but above freezing. And then Friday, here come the snow showers of the Arctic front, 38. In the deep freeze Saturday and Sunday, and then we crawl back out into the low 30s with mostly sunny skies next Monday.
Right now, we're following some breaking news out of Fairfax County. Tonight, a jury has found Brendan Banfield guilty on all counts, including aggravated murder for killing his wife and another man.
We learned that verdict just 1 hour ago. You're looking at brand new video of Banfield's reaction after the judge read it. You can see very little emotion there as Banfield learned his fate. Bringing this trial to a close nearly 4 weeks. After it started, they got it done a little quicker. They surely did. Thanks for joining us on the news at 6. I'm Leslie Foster.
And I'm Lorenzo Hall. WUSA 9 has been committed to following this case from the very beginning. And of course, that continues tonight. Our Matthew Torres has been in the courtroom for the duration of this trial. So we watched the verdict being read there, Matthew. What more can you tell us about what played out there at the courthouse?
Yeah, so you guys were able to watch the reaction from Brendan Banfield as far as not having emotions whenever this verdict was read. I was sitting behind maybe about a couple of rows from Christine Banfield family. As soon as this verdict dropped, you can see them starting to get emotional, starting to tear up, and of course begin to cry. In fact, one of the relatives could be seen looking up, almost saying thank you to God as this was happening. Now, directly in front of me, I am learning that the Banfield's former au pair, the one before Juliana Peres Magalhães, and her husband, they were also in the courtroom at that time. They too began crying. And really, even before we heard the jury read this verdict, there was that tension in the air. You can feel the weight of what was about to happen. As far as Banfield's father, who's been there the entire time, as soon as they said guilty on the first charge of aggravated murder, his head immediately dropped, and then he looked back up and just kept looking forward during this whole time. So certainly was an emotional moment, but also a really big victory for the Fairfax County Commonwealth Attorney's Office. The Commonwealth Attorney, Steve Descano, saying that there has been so much evidence, so much digital forensic evidence when it came to this case that they really try to focus on what Juliana Peres Magalhães said on the stand and using her statement to really focus against Brendan Banfield. But they also said they felt confident about this case because of the blood evidence. We also heard from Deputy Commonwealth Attorney Jenna Sands, who really drove the point across to the jurors that Brendan Banfield did this because he was having an affair with Juliana and that he wanted to be with her instead of his wife, Christine. And both Descano and Jenna Sands calling Brendan Banfield tonight a monster.
I think that everyone has commented on what was so obvious, that he was not truthful, that he was cold, that he behaved oddly in response to questions that should have elicited emotion, that he never spoke of himself as Christine's husband, that he didn't speak lovingly of his wife, that he showed absolutely no human emotion that we expected to see of someone in his position.
Again, Brendan Banfield not only being found guilty of stabbing his wife 7 times in the neck, but also shooting Joseph Ryan. The condition was that the jury could not split who they found was responsible for the murders, that Brendan Banfield was responsible for both of these murders. You got to keep in mind that there's still the 4-year-old daughter who was there in the house at the time of these killings. She is now about to turn 8 years old. That is also another priority for the family moving forward, trying to get past this. Brendan Banfield's sentencing has now been scheduled in May. Keep in mind, Juliana Peres Magalhães, even though she accepted a plea deal for lesser charge of manslaughter from the Commonwealth, she still could face up to 10 years behind bar. Her sentencing is in just a couple of weeks. Guys?
Yeah, Matthew, there was the verdict and all the emotions and the things we could see and obviously the things we couldn't see or feel. Did you get a sense of how the jurors were reacting when all of this happened?
You know, during this whole trial, it's been mixed reaction from the jury as far as were they paying attention and were they not. They deliberated for about 9 hours in 2 days. And so during this time, the person who actually was really in charge of the jury, we saw him kind of pacing down the hallway during the lunch break. You can tell just how much he's thinking about this case. For the most part, jurors were pretty stoic when the verdict was read. There was one specific person, a woman on the front row. You could tell she looked upset about this. Obviously, we can't tell what they're thinking, but you can tell that no matter what happens, that you can't take back Christine, you can't take back Joseph Ryan, and that this is weighing on everyone so much for all these weeks and all these years since this incident happened.
Yeah, so much to consider, and we'll never be able to answer the why. It will never make sense.
It will never make sense.
so we know.
And poor Valerie will
Yeah.
just never get her parents back. And
Yeah.
that's the most tragic thing of all as well, too.
Yeah, and we're not done yet. We know the sentencing for Juliana is in February, and then Brendan Banfield, as you mentioned, in May. All right, Matthew Torres, thank you. And we just got a statement from Joseph Ryan's mother. By the way, she said, quote, "I thank the jury, the prosecution, the judge, and the justice system. I thank everyone that loved and supported Joe. It's a good day. It does not bring Joe back, but it says that Brendan Banfield will pay for the crimes he committed on that day."
And you can expect more from WUSA 9 on this breaking news. For updates anytime, download the WUSA 9 app on your phone. Watch our newscasts anytime on the free WUSA 9 Plus streaming app.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
All right, so the great dig out continues 1 week after our big snowstorm. D.C., Maryland, and Virginia all still feeling the impacts tonight, especially when it comes to the icy streets and sidewalks.
And we're learning there could be a little more snow in the forecast.
Boy.
Let's bring in the chief, Topper Shutt, and temper this a bit for us, Top, for those of us who are a little snow fatigued at this point.
I would not lose a wink of sleep over this.
Good.
Okay. I wish it were a different case because, you know, Caitlin and I would like some more snow, but no, I would not lose a wink over this. So let's talk about this, all right? So here are the headlines. We actually have a chance of a little bit of snow tomorrow night, and then another chance Friday evening, both of which are super, super small. Ironically enough, the one on Friday evening may have more of an impact during rush hour. So light snow or snow showers, that is what we're talking about. Right now, I would just say, hey, you may have some slick spots, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over this. I'll come back and show you in about 10 minutes the new models. It's kind of shunting everything south of us, and it's not a big system, and it doesn't have potential, okay? Next 12 hours, if you're headed out, I mean, it's cold. We were 34 today, 30 by about 7 o'clock, and we fall pretty quickly. We go to 20 degrees by dawn. Those are downtown temperatures. And then tomorrow, some sunshine to start. Temperatures will make it back up to around 40. Notice the clouds roll in, but notice we have no flakes. Here's something nice. We go up the temps, and then get ready. We go back to a deep freeze over the weekend. And then after that, kind of a different story. We'll talk about that because after our deep freeze on Saturday and Sunday, all indications are temps will continue to rise after that for a week, maybe two.
Okay, thank you, Top. So 30 minutes ago, we got word Montgomery County schools will open tomorrow on a 2-hour delay. We saw snow still covering these buses this afternoon, but they're going to be ready to roll Tuesday morning, apparently. Students there haven't had class since January 23rd. By the way, still no word on Prince George's County schools, but our Alexis Wainwright, she's been in the Weather Commander driving through Montgomery and Prince George's counties. She has an update tonight from Upper Marlboro.
Well, Montgomery County Public Schools have announced that they will be on a 2-hour delay come Tuesday. Now, we started our day over there where some of the sidewalks are still covered with snow and ice, and that's causing a concern. Meanwhile, we are also monitoring the conditions in Prince George's County. Take a look here in Upper Marlboro. This is just one neighborhood where neighbors say they haven't seen a plow just yet, and that's what is making them so much more concerned as they wait for an announcement. As cleanup continues across Maryland, one concern keeps coming up with residents: sidewalks, especially in neighborhoods.
You know, it's difficult to clear the sidewalks as there were like 5 or 6 inches of ice on top of the snow. And plus, you know, the snowplow actually put more snow, you know, on the sidewalks.
Heather Jowell's neighbors in Potomac say that makes things extremely dangerous.
Nervous for kids and nervous for pets. You get a lot of traffic here. And when the sidewalks are closed off, you don't want to be in the street. Because some people ignore the speed limit. Most of the sidewalks are done now, but there are quite a few that still need to be done. So you just need to be very careful.
I think the owner already tried to make the surface walkable. So the kids can, you know, like maybe be extra cautious walking to school, or the parents can drive them.
Despite the hurdles, Heather Jowell and her son would like to see schools open back up for classes.
At this point, we're missing like a lot of instruction. Like AP exams, they don't get pushed back.
But over in Prince George's County, there's a different perspective.
You can't get out. That's unsafe.
Neighbors tell us roads like this one in Upper Marlboro still haven't seen a plow.
You're putting children and adults' lives in danger with the possibility of them going back to school with nowhere to stand to wait for the bus.
We checked in with Prince George's County Public Schools. They say several factors go into closure and delayed decisions.
In this case, there were a number of water main breaks around several of our schools, and we just didn't feel that, that would have been the safest avenue for bringing our kids back.
Officials say they also considered staffing, including bus drivers who called out because of road conditions.
I think the message is a combination of be patient, help where you can, and use your judgment in whether or not you allow a child to go to school based on the weather conditions.
Now, both Montgomery County and Prince George's County Department of Transportations are asking for people, if they can, to move their cars off of the road and onto the driveway to make the cleanup process as they continue to try to get through some more of these roads easier. Now, of course, there's still a lot more that we are waiting to hear from Prince George's County, but we will update you as we learn more. Alexis Wainwright, WUSA 9.
Tonight, D.C. officials tell us they're investigating 4 possible weather-related deaths. Mayor Muriel Bowser shared this news in an update this afternoon. Our Rafael Sanchez Cruz was there. He has the latest on the city's response.
Tonight, these cases are being handled as suspicious deaths. The mayor's office tells us it could take weeks until we know the cause of death for all 4 people. They believe all 4 of them were unhoused.
One of the longest stretches of frigid temperatures in D.C. may also be deadly.
It's not confirmed, but sadly, we think the answer is yes.
Mayor Muriel Bowser says officials are investigating up to 4 weather-related deaths.
At least 2, probably all of the suspicious deaths are related to unhoused residents.
Officials say they continue doing outreach to get people into shelters.
From the beginning of the storm, as of last week, we had an additional 100 or so folks who had not come in before, and that number continues to grow.
Tuesday, D.C. public schools will open on time, despite some questions about heat in some classrooms.
Schools that are completely without heat, that's not the case. We do have issues throughout where there's a subset of classrooms.
D.C.'s Director of General Services, Delano Hunter, says the number of impacted schools can change at any moment, but insists all issues are being addressed.
The goal is for learning is typically about 68 degrees.
D.C.'s Public Works will resume handing out warnings for those who do not clear sidewalks. For now, they're holding off on $25 fines for residents and $150 fines for business owners. DPW says they're also transitioning over to manual trash pickup because of the frozen alleys across the district. This means crews will walk into alleyways to collect the garbage instead of sending trucks through.
Because we have never attempted this before, we are working as hard as we can. So if you are not on a Monday route, you are encouraged to put your trash in the alleyway as best you can. Please leave it there.
Another huge talker, snowcrete. DDOT says they will continue hauling the snowcrete to one of their 3 locations. They expect one to close by tomorrow. Now, I will tell you that they're going to be focusing on major roadways, including Wisconsin Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, and Georgia Avenue. In the district, I'm Rafael Sanchez Cruz, WUSA 9.
Students across Northern Virginia will likely head back to class tomorrow. Districts like Prince William County, Fairfax, and Arlington all plan to open with a 2-hour delay.
John Duran is live in Arlington County tonight. And John, are the roads ready for this return to school?
Leslie, I'll say the roads look ready, but check this out. This is one of the crosswalks here in Arlington, and I'm standing on a mountain of ice and snow about 3 to 4 feet below me. There is a sidewalk, but this snow got pushed up by plows. It's blocking the crosswalks, making foot travel difficult, a concern to some people that I spoke to. And students that I spoke to say they're not ready for break to end just yet.
Tuesday will likely be the first time Arlington County Public Schools students will see the inside of the classroom in more than 10 days. Have you guys been wanting to go back to school?
No.
You liked your time off?
Yes, enjoyed it.
Darby Henman and Casey Wilson are 8th graders at Williamsburg Middle School. They say they had some fun in the snow. At first, anyway.
We sledded for like 3 days straight, and then it kind of started to hurt, so then we went and just hung out inside.
The snowcrete is still here, blocking bus stops and sidewalks, potentially making for a tough trek to school Tuesday.
I slept 3 times today. Up on Glebe, it's really high, you're just walking on mountains, yeah. it's like most of the sidewalks aren't cleared, so it could be hard for walkers.
Max Titterton is a 7th grader at Gunston Middle School. As much as he'd like another snow day, he knows it's time to get back to class.
I think I'm fine with it. I think I got some important tests coming up this week, so I'm not really excited about that.
Titterson's grandmother says she isn't sold just yet. The school system won't change their mind.
If it turns out that they don't chicken, we'll see if they'll chicken out.
You're
They
not
might.
confident yet? Yeah.
No, I'm not. We'll see.
Arlington County Schools say there's ways you can help ensure a safe trip for students back to the classroom Tuesday morning. One, shoveling the sidewalk in front of your residence or a nearby bus stop you know students will be waiting at. Also, giving school buses extra time to complete the routes. It's going to take them a little bit longer, and giving your student extra time to get to school if they're walking, because looking at it right now, some of these sidewalks still pretty tough. I know this isn't tips for Arlington County students, but really tips for any schools opening back up after this storm, guys.
Now, John, we know you got up on that little mountain
That's
there,
what I'm
but
worried
can
about.
you
Yep.
get down
Yep.
is the question in one piece.
Yeah. That's why he's still standing there.
I
Now
know,
he
he's
hasn't even
like,
tried.
wait for it. We're not going to do this on camera.
Yeah, you got to plot. You got to plot. We know
want
how
you
it
to
is.
leave with your dignity.
Okay, we'll get the camera off of you, John.
Gotta
Thank
find
you.
my footing, yeah.
Bye, John.
We'll be right back. New at 6 tonight, 2 of our elderly neighbors are sharing a sad story of being scammed of their life's savings. They came forward in hopes of protecting the rest of us. So during a news conference today in Montgomery County, Lisa and Sahadev, they shared how they were targeted by people who claimed to be from Social Security. They were told to transfer money to a bank as part of a fraud investigation. The scammers even went so far as to threaten their victims.
They told me they were watching me and my house. I was so worried.
I worked hard my whole life to save this money, and they took it all from me.
Yeah, so the FBI and Montgomery County investigators traced the scams to India. They say arrests have been made there, and several carriers here have already been prosecuted. But be aware that government agencies will never call or email you to ask you to transfer money. All right, Todd, what are you tracking tonight?
I tried to show this a little while ago. It takes about a minute to load, so here we go. This is snow cover across the United States. I mean, this is incredible to see snow cover go all the way down to the coastline of North and South Carolina, of course, the Mid-Atlantic, much in the Mississippi River Valley, and of course back into the Great Lakes. That you don't see too terribly often. We'll come back. We have new model data in on the chance for seeing a couple flakes tomorrow night and again on Friday evening.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
A 34 today at National and at Dulles. First time in 10 days we made it above freezing. So let's talk about our little system tomorrow night. It is very weak. It does not have a lot of potential at all. So don't worry about it being like a coastal storm or anything. About this time tomorrow evening, a little bit of snow along the Ohio River, Cincinnati to Charleston. By around midnight, a little bit of snow makes it here. But notice the darker gradation there, blue, is actually south of town into southern Maryland. And then we get into, say, the morning hours. It's gone. Actually, it's moving through the Delmarva. It's gone. And then we have another system behind it, but that's going to be suppressed to our south. Now we'll jump to Friday. This is an Arctic front that's going to roll through. Apparent low pressure is way up like in the James Bay, but it's going to be whipping through here right around rush hour, evening. So we'll keep an eye on this. Some of these could produce some brief, heavy snow showers as it rolls through, and then boom, that goes away, and we go back in the deep freeze over the weekend. So right now, we'll say weather impact, what we're watching, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. Minor accumulation, if anything, a dusting to an inch. Right now, it looks more south, and we'll have more information tonight at 11 on this. Light shoveling or sweeping, maybe some slick spots. I mean, just the freezing and the thawing and freezing is going to cause that. So remember, need your shades, check your windshield wiper fluid, clean your headlights and tail lights, and watch for runners still. They're still kind of ducking from the sidewalk that's not plowed back on the road. Tomorrow, it starts out cold. Around 10 down in the burbs, around 20 downtown. We go back, though, to around 40. Clouds come in, but we're dry through the evening rush hour tomorrow. And notice, no alerts. How about that? Upper 30s on Wednesday, a little colder on Thursday, back in the mid-30s. And then ahead of the front on Friday, we're back near 40, but then the temps just plummet. In the 20s on Saturday, in the 20s on Sunday, and then boom, back in the low 30s on Monday. And then after that, we see a general temperature rise for the next 7 to possibly 10 days. We'll be back after this.
All right, top last word.
We're looking at some light snow tomorrow night. We'll see what if it's going to be here or south.
Okay. Prince George's County Public Schools closed tomorrow, by the way.
Good thing to know. We'll see you at 11, and they'll see you in 2 minutes.
WUSA 9 News at 6:30 starts with today's big story. About an hour and a half ago, we learned Brendan Banfield was found guilty of murder. So this was that moment. The verdict was read in that Fairfax County courtroom. Prosecutors say Banfield conspired with his family's au pair to kill his wife, Christine, and another man, Joseph Ryan. So we have been on top of this story since the trial began roughly 3 weeks ago. Thank you for streaming here with us tonight. I'm Lorenzo Hall. I'm joined now by Katie Lesso, who has watched every single moment of this trial, and also criminal defense attorney Paul Hianaga. Thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it. All right, Katie, I want to start with you.
Yeah.
We had this verdict today. What stood out to you? Being someone who followed every moment of this trial.
You know, it stood out to me, but at the same time it didn't, and I think that's his facial expression when he was being read the verdict, being told he was guilty on all 4 charges here. And we're talking about serious charges. He faces possible life sentence here, and he didn't really react at all from what we could see, unlike the people in the courtroom who we know were very emotional and crying, some of the family members.
Yeah, so Paul, you're aware of this trial. What happened? Were you surprised at all by this verdict?
You know, I have to be honest, I wasn't. I listened to the closing that was done by the prosecutor, and I thought it was actually very effective in taking what she anticipated to be the main arguments that would be presented by the defense and rebutting them up front. And I think in particular when she was talking about the fact that there almost seemed to be too many coincidences in this case. There was a coincidence that they happened to go to a shooting gallery. There was a coincidence that the door was unlocked. There was a coincidence that he was at a McDonald's at the time and was able to be called by the au pair to go to the home. There are all these things that are so, when you pull them together, make so unlikely the idea that this was not planned. I thought it was actually quite effective. On the other hand, you know, while I think the defense attorney did a really interesting and good job of trying to pull together as many factors. I think that his relying on the idea that some of the detectives were uncomfortable in providing testimony or that some of the evidence had not been fully tested was not really a compelling rebuttal to the evidence that had been amassed by the prosecution, which really pointed to the fact that this was a staged, manipulated, planned, event that was done by Brendan Banfield.
Being a criminal defense attorney and watching this play out, is there anything you would have done differently if you were representing Brendan Banfield? Anything you would have pointed out?
You know, I can't presume to be in a position of somebody who has lived and breathed this case. But I do think that a compelling, upfront theme that would have stuck into the mind of the jurors, something that said, you know, you heard it all. When that one detective, I think her name was Smith, used the phrase, when we were there in that meeting, we were told by our supervisor to, quote, get behind the theory. Right. And that to me, when I heard those words, when I was with you, Katie, and we were listening, I thought to myself, that is gold for the defense. That in my mind should have been the opening. The idea that you didn't have the evidence lead to the conclusion. You had a supervisor leading the evidence to a conclusion. And I think that should have been front and center. But, you know, hindsight is 20/20. I admire what he did otherwise.
You know, you talk about how that should have been the closing, the opening, and they spent a lot of time, the defense did, focused on Juliana Peres Magalhães. Do you think that was their downfall here?
Well, you know, I think to say that she lied, essentially, that this was a fabrication, her testimony, it's hard. I think it's not that compelling in the sense that she, you know, had an entire year. And one can understand how somebody facing charges on their own ultimately might crumble and say, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and tell what I need to say about what occurred. I think, of course, you want to attack her credibility. Of course, you want to make it sound like she's just saying whatever the prosecution wants in order to get the best deal possible. But it also makes sense that if she was the one who pulled the trigger for the second shot on Joe Ryan, she's here explaining her own acts, and she's explaining details that could be corroborated by objective evidence of the tale that she was telling. So, you know, I think even though the prosecution says that her testimony was just icing on the cake, I think the fact that she was able to help make concrete the complex narrative really was compelling for the prosecution.
I was going to say, I feel like they needed her, even though the Commonwealth's attorney there, Steve Descano, says, no, we were good without her. We had enough blood evidence. We were going to get this conviction no matter what. But I think listening to her story, describing their relationship from the time they started interacting romantically, really painted the picture for the jury there. It wasn't some boring blood evidence that would easily put a jury to sleep.
Well, you have to ask yourself, what motivation would Brendan Banfield have had?
Right.
The fact that he had an affair with the au pair, the fact that evidently they were in love, provides the motivation to engage in this heinous act of killing not only his wife, but the person who was enticed into this drama, Joe Ryan. Right. So without that motivation, without that evidence of the intensity of their affair, now I know he disputes, and he said, Brendan, that it really wasn't what it appeared to be until after the murders had occurred. Right. And then he saw her to be a heroine, and he fell in love with her. Who wouldn't fall in love with somebody who acted heroically? But it just didn't seem to hold water. The fact that they had started this relationship, all of this is so tawdry. It's so awful, this entire thing, that I think any jury looking at this just kind of said, oh my God.
That's what I was trying to figure out as a jury. How do you listen to something like this and it just doesn't make sense? I'm thinking of the jury processing everything, trying to make sense of this, and it's like, where do you go with?
I mean, look, some of it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, if you want to plan the murder of your wife, or if you're the prosecution saying he did this, you have to kind of rely on the idea that somebody came in with a rape fantasy and then said to himself, you know what, I think I'm going to take this one step further and begin stabbing her. Yeah. I mean, which doesn't really seem to make sense either. Right. So there are a lot of questions that, despite the verdict, honestly, I still in my mind am asking myself.
Yeah.
You know, we see Brendan Banfield taking the stand right here, and when he decided to take the stand and testify in his own murder trial, how surprised were you to see him get up there on the stand? I know a lot of people were like, don't do this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the prevailing wisdom sometimes among defense attorneys is if you don't have to put your client on the stand, don't, because you're just opening it up for cross-examination and it can go from bad to worse. But here, I mean, honestly, I think they had to put him on the stand. There was so much evidence that if it wasn't explained alternatively by Banfield, would have been left unrebutted. So he needed to stand up. He needed to do what he needed to do. Now, I think that his demeanor did not help. He was not somebody who had anyone, you know, had their heart go out to him. That's not what was accomplished by him. So,
but don't you know that going in? Wouldn't you say as an attorney, my client is not really conveying what we need him to? Let's not even go that route.
Look, as attorneys, you do your best.
Okay.
You work with your client. You pose questions. You see how they respond. But ultimately, you're not able to change the way they are. And people are the way they are. They have demeanors that they have. Some people are very nervous even though you believe they're telling fully and completely the truth. Other people are sang-froid, they are cold-blooded. You know, you're doing the best you can with somebody to try to have them tell a story that not only makes sense, but is done in a way that's credible. Done in a way where 12 people can look at it and say, you know what? There is some doubt, a reasonable doubt, and that's enough. But it wasn't enough here.
Can we talk about the plot for people who may be watching right now, just how this all played out? And I think this probably weighed on the jury as well. They met in late 2021.
Yeah.
She started serving as the au pair. And then you're talking about within the year, you're plotting a murder?
Right, so August 2022 is when Juliana says, and Brendan says as well, that relationship between the two of them first started, that physical relationship. And 3 months later, October of 2022 is when she says Brendan came to her with this elaborate plan to get rid of his wife because divorce wasn't an option. And you know, a few months after that, February 2025 or 2024, I'm sorry, I'm messing up all the dates. February 2023
yes,
is when Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan are killed. So it's all very quickly happening and unfolding, and you have to wonder what is going on in this home.
Did that play?
Well, I mean, I have to ask myself in some ways, if you're thinking as the verdict indicates that this was a catfishing, okay? Really? I mean, is the idea of divorcing your wife that big a hill to climb? Do you have to go to the extent of going through this elaborate catfishing to actually kill her? I mean, I get the idea that maybe he thought that he wouldn't have custody of the child, but that doesn't seem to be uppermost in his mind if he was leaving the child in the basement while all these events were occurring. It doesn't seem like he's putting that much of a priority on the child's welfare.
Right.
So you do have to ask yourself, why go through all these machinations? Why do all this? When you could have just, you know, found a way, like happens every single day all over this country, you find a way to say, you know what, I've met somebody else and we've had a great opportunity, but this is just not the way it's going to have to be.
When you saw him up there on the stand, though, was he believable to you? Did you find him credible?
You know, I have to say that I was underwhelmed by the way that he presented his version of events. It just didn't have the feel. I didn't listen to it and say to myself, now that is somebody who is speaking through the angst of tragedy and trying to explain what happened. That is not a man who appears to be fighting for his life, fighting for the truth to somehow emerge. That was not the impression that I had watching him.
Yeah.
The only times we really saw emotion is that moment you saw there when that 911 or body cam video
I think it was the body
played.
camera or the 911 call, and he's listening to that, and that was really the only moment we saw emotion from him. We didn't see emotion when he testified. He was smirking through most of it, and we definitely didn't see much emotion today when he's being told,
that's right,
you've been found guilty on all 4 charges.
The only time we saw this sort of happy moment, if you will, is when he was recounting the beginning of his relationship with the au pair, when he talked about her sending him those messages with, you know, matches that she had on dating websites who looked like Brendan, who had similar names.
Similar names,
But
yeah.
he seemed to be relishing in that sort of moment as he went back to that point. But that's it. Every other moment in the case.
And that's not going to go over well.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the mother of a 4-year-old child at the time who is dead, and another person who is dead. And it all seems to have sprung from the whole fact that he was having this affair with an au pair. I mean, to in any way not express deep regret, deep shame over that, but instead to kind of remember it, you know, with as you described, Lorenzo, you know, is not in keeping with what you would want a jury to see and realize. People, we all make mistakes, grievous ones, but he certainly did not make that clear.
Yeah, and Paul and Lorenzo, we know that he will be sentenced on May 8th, I believe is the date he'll be sentenced. But you know, there's another person involved in all this, Juliana Peres Magalhães, and she'll have her sentencing February 13th. I know, Paul, when we spoke last, we were talking about her plea agreement. So many people have been asking, what happens to her? What does her sentence look like? Now that she's going to finally be sentenced, she did keep up her end of the deal, testifying against Brendan. What do you think happens here next?
Well, I was looking at the plea agreement itself, and it does indicate that the charge for which she pled guilty has a maximum of 10 years imprisonment and a minimum of 1 year imprisonment. But at the same time, the plea agreement says that the Commonwealth will recommend the defendant be sentenced to a period of active incarceration capped at time served. In other words, that she be released for the time she's already spent.
Meaning that's what
jail.
prosecutors will recommend,
That's
but the
what
judge
they recommend,
can.
but the prosecutor doesn't make the decision about the sentence. The judge does. Now, does the fact that the prosecution is recommending a particular sentence hold tremendous weight, typically in the mind of a judge? Yes. Is it conclusive? Is the judge required to follow a recommendation? I don't believe in Virginia that is the case. In fact, I think the agreement does make clear that ultimately the court has discretion.
But even going into this, when accepting this agreement, it's either that still, 10 years being the max for this manslaughter charge versus a lifetime in prison for murder.
Yeah, I mean,
That's what she was originally charged with.
this is, under the circumstances for Juliana, a very good deal. I mean, she has spent time in jail, yes. But if the recommendation is accepted by the court, she'll be out, okay? Or she'll be
Back in
sent
Brazil,
to ICE
yeah.
and deported. But in short, she'll be out of her sentence.
Would you call that a sweetheart deal? We heard reporters asking it and describing it as such.
No, I don't think a sweetheart deal. I don't use that term because there's so many factors that have to be weighed. And ultimately, you know, she was, one has to believe, the lesser of the two players in this horrific drama. So I wouldn't call it a sweetheart deal. I think it's no doubt a much better deal than what she would have faced if she had gone to trial on the main charge and had lost. So in that way, it's a pretty good deal. But sweetheart makes it sound like there was something inappropriate or something not right about the deal. I wouldn't put that label on it.
Okay, Paul Kiyonaga, Katie Lusso, great work. Thank you for your expertise.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.
It is my job this February 2 to look to the skies and report back to you that there is a shadow here on my ground. 6 more weeks of winter abound.
How do you trust that thing? It just woke up. Yeah, not the forecast many of us were hoping for, but it's probably the one you expected, right? Today, Punxsutawney Phil predicted 6 more weeks of winter on this Groundhog Day. But, you know, we have our own furry forecaster, too, here in the D.C. Not talking about Top. His name is Potomac Phil. Our Lionel Donovan was at DuPont Circle Park, where Potomac Phil made his prediction this morning.
Potomac Phil has spoken. 6 more weeks of winter and 6 more months of political gridlock. But despite the news, many of the folks that came out here today say they still had a good time.
Potomac Phil saw his shadow. So, 6 more weeks of winter and 6 more months of political gridlock.
Potomac Phil is a taxidermied groundhog and has made 14 predictions since 2012. He not only makes weather predictions, he also predicts the political climate. Despite the cold, dozens came to DuPont Circle to hear Phil's wisdom and say despite the news, they still had a good time.
I'm very impressed with the crowd that came out today, given the temperatures. I was afraid this was going to be our worst attended year, and it was one of the better ones.
I'm pretty bummed about the 6 more weeks of winter and the 6 more months of political gridlock. But, you know, in Phil we trust.
Like I said, it looks like we have 6 more weeks of winter, but according to the longest running groundhog who's been making these predictions, Punxsutawney Phil, there's about a success rate of 35%. So maybe we might see some sunny days. From D.C., Lionel Donovan, WUSA 9.
All right, you know, Maryland had to get in on the fun as well. Of course, they use a crab. People in Baltimore gathered to celebrate Crab Hog Day with this little guy right here, Chesapeake Donnie, as he's called. We're told Chesapeake Donnie did not see his shadow, which means an early spring is on the way.
WUSA 9 Weather Impact is sponsored by Morgan & Morgan.
Give me more of Chesapeake Donnie.
The crab might be right.
Yeah, I'm with the crab, all right?
I mean, I think Phil, it was 140th time he's seen the shadow. So it's you can predict 83% he predicts 6 more weeks of winter. But looking on down the road, we don't really see much after. We have one more Arctic blast this weekend.
Okay.
And then temps kind of go up, and then they kind of keep going up.
Let's go. We are over it.
We're not.
What
It's
a
just started
winter.
to- what a winter.
Oh, man.
We've had 7 inches of snow.
Exactly. And
Woo!
then ice.
That's crazy.
It's been a headache.
This is crazy. Snow cover. Look at this. I mean, snow cover down to the Carolinas, coastal Carolinas. Myrtle Beach had 8 inches Saturday. Wilmington had about 5 or 6, but a couple of beaches just to the south and back to the west, I think Ocean Isle Beach, 15 inches. Wow. On the coast of North Carolina. That's crazy. That, yeah, my buddy sent me some pictures. It was pretty special. And, you know, pretty good, not great, but pretty good snow cover in the Rockies and back in the Sierra, too. So, whoops, let me get out of the way here. So, Phil, yeah, he saw his shadow again. I mean, he sees it all the time. It's 140th time he's seen it, okay? Or no, 109 times. He's been 140 Groundhog Days. So, 21 times early spring. And then the last time he said, hey, no more winter, early spring was 2019. So also it marks a midpoint between the solstice and the equinox. So there's some good things to be excited about. We're getting close to spring, whether it feels like it or not. All right, let's go over the Chroma Key. So we'll talk about our potential for a little bit of light snow or really flurries, though. I'm not very excited about this. Doesn't have a lot of potential like the last couple storms we talked about. This is 9 a.m. on Tuesday. By 6 p.m., pretty good little stripe of snow right along the Ohio River into central West Virginia. And then it sort of ducks south. You see that little darker gradation? So the heavier, quotations, if you will, back down into the south, St. Mary's County, and maybe even to Calvert County. That's 1 o'clock in the morning Wednesday. It gets out of here by early morning Wednesday. And then this, you see, you might say, oh, a little bit of snow back there. That's going to stay to our south. That will miss us. Now, we're going to go to Friday. Not an area low pressure, but an Arctic front. So an Arctic front comes through, and it's going to be a little milder ahead of it. We'll be near 40. It can squeeze out moisture very efficiently. So by 1 o'clock, some snow showers, Pittsburgh down to Charleston, and then by 6:30, some snow showers possible in the metro. So we'll watch that because the timing is more critical. Again, Worst case scenario, it snows for like 20 minutes, but the timing is bad. That's 6:30. That would affect some Friday evening plans. And then we just go back into the deep freeze Saturday and Sunday. But after that, looks pretty good if you don't like this sort of stuff. So weather impact, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., minor accumulation or no accumulation, light shoveling or sweeping. Yeah, maybe some slick spots, but that's more because of the thawing and freezing and thawing and freezing. So you'd need shades. I mean, it's just snowblind without shades. Windshield washer fluid, keep it topped off. Headlights clean, taillights clean, and also your cameras. I did that yesterday. And then watch for walkers and runners on the road. So tomorrow, a little bit of sun to start. Pretty darn cold, 20 downtown. We could see temperatures 8 to 12 in the burbs. Clouds come in, but again, we are dry through the evening rush and through early Tuesday night. So light snow possible at night. And then returning partly cloudy on Wednesday, partly cloudy on Thursday, a little colder on Thursday, back in the mid-30s. Slightly warmer, so to speak, on Friday, ahead of the front 38. There are the snow showers. There's the deep freeze, 20s. Wow, for highs on Saturday and Sunday. That might be generous. Back to 32 next Monday. But then after that, Zoe, temps keep going up.
Okay, that's what we like to see. That's more like it. Thank you, Top. So the Grammys were last night on WUSA 9, and some local artists are adding a trophy to their shelves. Baltimore-based American rock band Turnstile won its first ever Grammy for Best Metal Performance and Best Rock Album. Woodbridge native Shabuzi earned his first Grammy for Best Country Duo Group Performance for the song Amen. And stars from the Netflix hit K-pop Demon Hunters, including Montgomery County's very own Arayami, won Best Song Written for Visual Media. It's the first ever Grammy for a K-pop group. Bradley Blackburn has a look at some of the night's other winners.
Magic and music were in the air at the Grammys, with performers from Lady Gaga to Bruno Mars. Billie Eilish won Song of the Year for Wildflower. Olivia Dean took home Best New Artist. And Kendrick Lamar, now the most winning rapper in Grammy history, received Record of the Year alongside SZA.
This is what music is about.
Another big winner, Bad Bunny, who made history with the first Spanish language album to win Album of the Year.
I want to dedicate this award to all the people that had to leave their homeland, their country, to follow their dreams.
He was one of several stars who spoke out about immigration enforcement.
I'm going to say, eyes out.
Some wearing pins saying ice out.
I would be remiss if I didn't say something about what's happening in the actual world.
The late Ozzy Osbourne was honored with an all-star tribute led by Post Malone, while Lauryn Hill returned to the Grammy stage for the first time in more than a quarter century to honor Roberta Flack. Trevor Noah was back hosting for a sixth and final time, and he presented Cher with a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Never give up on your dream, no matter what happens.
Dreams realized for so many artists on music's biggest night. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
All right, Top, you get the last word.
Okay, so we'll have some new information tonight, and I think by tonight we'll be able to sort out if it's light snow or just flurries tomorrow night.
Okay.
And then we're 40, no matter what. Upper 30s on Wednesday. We'll also have some new information on Friday, snow showers, and then the Arctic chill on Saturday and Sunday. But the good news is, if your kitchen bathroom pipes can make it through this weekend, I think they're going to make it through the winter. Because after this, I really, really don't see much in terms of Arctic outbreaks, consistent outbreaks, or even a chance of snow. So I'm a little sad.
Okay, I'm sorry. Did you wash your car yet? I have so much
No, I don't know what to do. No.
I know. I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for being here with us at 6:30. We'll see you at 11. Have a great night until then.